All right, Jason, offensive line, it's got to get better. And it's reasonable to think, based on who they've got coming back, don't lose a lot, that this could be a jump for the offensive line.
Yeah, it's got to be. They've got to take a big jump. Like you just said, it's got to be better. Many of us were expecting it to be better last year, and it just wasn't. They really struggled with injuries. Really, never really had a, when Matt Bockhorst come out of fall camp and was named the starting center, it didn't at the time, but it should have thrown up a red flag for me, and it didn't. Those first few games of the season when he was at center, the interior of that line really struggled. Another group that also struggled with injuries. But once they got Mason Trotter started the season hurt. Once he got back on the field and started playing, and once Hunter Rayburn started playing, once those two guys got in at center and started playing, and Bockhorst moved back over to guard, we started to see that line gel a little bit over the back few games of the season. There was a lot more consistency with the starting lineup. Over the first 9 games, Clemson started 6. There were 6 different starting lineups at offensive line, and that's just not a way to have a lot of success when you're having those kind of injuries. But they pretty much get everybody back except for Bockhorst next season. You got Jordan McFadden over at left tackle. He's veteran guy, probably one of the better tackles in the ACC. You got Will Putnam over at right tackle, former blue chip guy. He's going into his 3rd year. This will be his 2nd year starting. You'll have Will Putnam at right guard. Sometimes I want to say he's at left guard, but he's at right guard. This will be his 2nd year, or no, this will be his 3rd year. He's going into his senior year now, if I'm not mistaken, but his 3rd year starting. And I thought Putnam struggled some at the beginning of the season, but really settled in and really played well down the stretch last year. And over at left guard, you had Marcus Tate, who was a freshman last season. He got thrown into the fire against Georgia, won the starting job coming out of fall camp, and really struggled in those first couple games. Lost the job for a week or so, then was inserted back into the starting lineup, and he really started playing better, the more he got on the field. The biggest question for me is what Clemson's going to do at center next year. They get Rayburn and Trotters both back, but we've all seen the reports and know that Clemson's been kind of looking for an interior offensive lineman to come in, a graduate transfer to come in and start at center next year and kind of be that stopgap until Ryan Linthicum is ready. He's a rising sophomore. He was the #1 center in the country in his recruiting class coming out of high school. But Clemson hasn't started a freshman or sophomore center, true freshman or true sophomore center in a long time. They tend to like those guys that have more experience. And Linthicum was not ready next year, so they're kind of looking for a guy to serve as a stopgap next season while Linthicum continues to develop. If they can find that guy, this can be a pretty good offensive line. The talent's there, and there won't be. There's also a coaching change we need to throw in there. Thomas Austin's taking over for Robbie Caldwell, who's moving into an administrative position. Austin's been there a couple of seasons, at least once. I can't remember if he's been there 1 or 2 seasons now, but he was there at least 1 season, kind of getting his feet wet. He's a coach at Georgia Southern or either Georgia State before he came back to Clemson. He was a former offensive lineman at Clemson, but this is – he's kind of in a, I don't want to call it a bad position. Let's just say, I don't know the right term to use, but as high as the expectations were for that offensive line last season, and they failed to live up to them. Now you got and a lot of that was put on Robbie Caldwell by the fan base. There was a lot of fans that were not sad to see him retire from his on-field spot. So Austin stepping in, and his feet's going to be put to the fire, which I think he can step up and get the job done. I think he's going to be a heck of an offensive line coach. The kids kind of seem to really respond to him. Big season for Clemson's offensive line next year, no doubt about it. They got the talent in that room, and we kind of been waiting to see it translate onto the field for 2 years now. This is be year 3 is kind of put up or shut up time.
Offensive linemen typically need more development, both physically to be ready for the college game and just in terms of learning the position because of the combinations and the chemistry that's needed along the offensive line. And it sounds like you've listed enough guys in the rotation that we don't need to expect that Colin Sadler or Blake Miller in the 22 class would be needed.
I think both of those guys, I wouldn't be shocked to see either of those guys on the 2 deep. I think both of those guys could come in. I mean, after seeing them up close, late last year, those guys both look ready to play as freshmen physically. And that's not saying they are mentally, but I think both of those guys have the potential to make the 2 deep. Not saying they will, but there's also other guys. Like there's a former 5-star who redshirted last year, Tristan Lee, who's kind of biding his time. There, you got Paul. Well, no, you don't got him. He transferred. I was about to say you got Paul Teo, but he transferred to. I was thinking of Dietrich Pennington. You got Dietrich Pennington, who was a freshman last year and got injured. They're really high on him. This is a big guy. He's an interior guy, going to play guard for Clemson. I think he's going to be on the 2 deep this year. But it would not shock me in any way to see either of those freshmen on the 2 deep. Miller, Sadler, both, I think they got very high ceilings, both former 4-star guys, and with lots of potential.